Hey guys, it's Rogers and boy do I have one for you today. So it's 6 AM, the game comes out in 18 hours, but I've made some changes to the end game build and I thought, you know what, I need to redo this so you have the most up-to-date and optimal measure. We're going to go through breakpoints, lucky hit, builds, aspects, things you can change, and Paragon. Stick around to see the most overpowered build you will see on the Sorcerer. If you like what you see, don't hesitate to like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel. And don't forget, we are going live 2 hours before Diablo launch, where we will be playing a level 1 to 100 hardcore, hopefully in one sitting, pushing for world first on Sorcerer using this exact build. Now, it will be live on our YouTube, but let's get into it. There's been a lot of talk at the moment about how sorcerers are not actually S-class builds. You've got, your barbs with whirlwind doing ridiculous damage. You've got druids and pulverize again, well, pulverizing. But sorcerers are getting left behind. That's because people are not playing them right. Sorcerers have some amazing builds and some amazing setup. Just watch and see. Now, this build is very similar to our leveling build. We've done a couple of little tweaks, which you'll want to swap around about level 70 when you hit Torment 4 for the defensives, but let's have a look into it. I'm going to show you the build, show you the points, and then I'll show you what you can change on the build once you get a bit stronger. So, we maintain Frostbolt at the moment, and we continue to use our Glinting Frostbolt to gain mana when we hit chilled or frozen targets. The chances you will need this is very small. However, until you have a couple of aspects, it is nice to have just as a emergency. Eventually, we will be dropping a generator totally. Next, you got your ice shards. Now, the reason we run with ice shards is because it does insane damage. The way they work is you fire 5 shards to the target, each doing 35% damage and does 25% more damage if the target is frozen. If you hit a frozen target, you have 100% to ricochet off enemies, and if they're not frozen, you have a 40% chance, but they'll always be frozen. How? Well, thanks to great ice shards, when you have a barrier active, cast of ice shards treat enemies as if they were frozen. So permanent 25% more damage and permanent ricochet, which is a great start. And we do still run 1 point in Devastation to get our 3 points in Elemental Dominance, as we'll be at 100% mana permanently. It's just a 9% flat damage increase. We're going to run 5 out of 5 in Teleport for the cooldown reduction, and then run 1 point in Enhanced Teleport for further cooldown reduction into Shimmering Teleport for the 30% damage reduction. We will at one point, well, for a significant amount of time, be having a cooldown much lower than 5 seconds, so this is just a permanent 30% flat damage reduction. Glass Cannon. I questioned about this on hardcore because, well, 9% more damage taken is not the nicest, but honestly that 18% is just too nice to pass up, isn't it? Ice Barrier, we've discussed this in our previous videos. It is very nice because Mystical Ice Armor is broken. It will generate you at max level about 1.3 million shield a second. Now, yes, I know I've been corrected that you can only have a barrier compared to your maximum health. So if you've got 50,000 health, you can only have a 50,000 health barrier. But because you attack that fast, your barrier does this. It sits at 100% and goes 94, 94, 94, 94, 94, 94 for the entire duration of your ice armor. It's that insane. Enhanced ice armor for the mana regeneration is useless. It's worth 0.25 mana a second, and honestly, if I could take anything else, I would. Frost Nova is the bread and butter of this build. The way it works is you will have it on your bars to start with. Again, there's potential we can change this out later, but we'll discuss that a bit further on. When you have Enhanced Frost Nova, when you kill enemies that have been affected, it will reduce the cooldown by up to 4 seconds per cast. That is very important, per cast, because we will be casting Frost Nova roughly at one point every 0.66% of a second, so 2/3 of a second. Mystical Frost Nova will make all enemies vulnerable for 4 seconds and make all bosses vulnerable for 6 seconds. We run 1 point into Elemental Attunement for now, which because of how high our lucky hit will be, will have a permanent cooldown reduction coming off once every 10 seconds. We will be dropping this very shortly as soon as you hit mid-80s though, and I'll explain why. Now, we run 3 points in Precision Magic for the lucky hit % chance. We run 1 point to Icy Blades because the damage off it is pitiful and you don't need them. We run the Ice Blades cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds every time it hits a vulnerable enemy. And we run with Summoned Ice Blades, which gives you 20% more cooldown reduction to your other skills. This has been significantly nerfed, but it is still incredibly strong, and you will see why. Now, because I play on hardcore, we're going to be rocking 2 points in Align the Elements, we're going to be putting 3 points of protection and 3 points of mana shield. I've actually dropped off our Conjuration Mastery to be able to put 1 point into Align the Elements and put an extra 2 points into Mana Shield for the extra defensives. I don't think this will be needed at the higher end, and we will be swapping it around a little bit. Now, we do not run a Mastery ability or an Ultimate ability. That's how overpowered this build is. We don't even need to go for the higher end stuff. We just use basics and keep it simple. We run 3 points of Permafrost for 15% elite damage, 3 points in Hoarfrost, which is 9% chill damage and 18% to frozen. This stacks, guys. So if a target is frozen, it gets the benefit from chilled as well. So Hoarfrost is actually a 27% damage increase to frozen enemies. Icy Touch, you'll deal 12% increased damage, cold damage to vulnerable enemies, as our Mystical Frost Nova constantly makes enemies vulnerable. It means it's just a permanent 12% flat damage to vulnerable bucket. Damage buckets is a whole nother video. If you want one, let me know. And Frigid Breeze, cold damage against vulnerable enemies, has a 20% chance to generate 15 mana. You're going to see how this build works, and this lucky hit will make perfect sense. Your final choice is to either run Avalanche or Shatter. Shatter is not worth it. People are pushing Shatter at the moment and they're like, well, you know, you can use it to explode packs. You can kill 6 enemies around an elite and the elite might take half his health and damage. Okay, well, they explode for 25% of the damage they've had done to them. But Avalanche increases the damage you do by 40%. So, yeah, fair enough. If there's a massive pack, you might be able to blow up an elite. But realistically, Avalanche makes casts cost nothing. They make 40% additional damage, and it's a lucky hit, which is 10%, which is doubled against vulnerable, and all targets are permanently vulnerable, so it's a 20% chance, exactly the same as Frigid Breeze, which also makes life much easier to show your numbers. So, what we're going to do is we're going to use Protection to give us barriers with our shields, with all cooldowns. Frost Nova, cooldown. Ice Armour, gives you a shield anyway, but cooldown. Teleport, cooldown. Ice Blades, cooldown. So there's protection getting bounced over and over and over and over again. We are going to be using the skills for Ice Shards Enhancement, which means your Ice Shards will automatically conjure and fly towards frozen enemies. And Frost Nova Enhancement, which is a 30% lucky hit chance for your conjuration skills to unleash your Frost Nova when they hit the enemies. This Frost Nova applies vulnerable to enemies, and also, whilst you kill the enemies that are frozen through it, you'll actually reduce the cooldown of your own Frost Nova, meaning we don't need to put any points in Frost Nova. Frost Nova is just instant now. We will be coming off cooldown every second, and there's nothing you can do. You just keep going, it'll just be off cooldown, off cooldown, off cooldown, which is brilliant for bosses. Because we will be proccing Frost Nova that much, utilising our Ice Blades will keep them in almost a permanent stagger. Now, this is the bread and butter, the base of the build, okay? Bring up shields. The shields allow you to count greater ice shards against bosses as them being frozen, even though they're not, for the to get the times multiplier, which will cause it to ricochet off all of their enemies, which will cause you to deal 25% more damage. Your Ice Blades will automatically freeze enemies, which will cause you to launch 3 ice shards that are frozen, that will crit, that will ricochet. It's a very nice synergy build. You teleport around to keep yourself safe. You don't want to be in the middle. Max Roll have done a guide on this recently, actually, and I'll show you it a bit later in the video. And they've added in where you teleport in, you do more damage to close enemies and you stun them. And they're using the Ricochet, the Piercing rune. And they are using, they're not using Ice Blades at all, they're using Meteor or Inferno. And as much as I'm not going to say that build won't be great, this one here just has so much more synergy. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick look into the aspects. We run with Harley Quinn's Crest. This here is the only unique you run, and it's not mandatory, but it's nice. 20% damage reduction, plus 4 to all ranks of skills, all stats, cooldown reduction, maximum life. This here is amazing for our build. We need everything other than the crafting material find, and let's face it, I'm lazy, so I'm not going to complain about free materials. We run Ever-Living Aspect onto our chest. That there will allow us to take 25% less damage from crowd-controlled or vulnerable enemies. Now, the way damage reduction works is you will take, so say it takes Harley Quinn first, you take 20% less damage from 100%. So you're now taking 80% less damage. then your everything investment spent might be 25%, and you'll reduce your 80% by 25%. Okay, so that means you'll go down to, because you're reducing your 80% by 25%, you're reducing it down to 60. So yes, if you add them together, it was a 45% damage reduction, but multiplicative, it's actually only about a 40%. And then the next one, the smaller you get, the more you have, the less impact it has. Now, for gloves, we're going to be running Aspect of Frozen Memories. Aspect of Frozen Memories is what will allow our Avalanche, which is what gives us our free ice shards, and our pop back over to it now. Free ice shards and also 40% more damage. We'll actually be able to get 2 charges of it every time it procs. And because at one point we'll be proccing it more than once a second, we will permanently have it up against groups or against single targets. Aspect of the Protector, I still personally think will be worth it. Damaging an elite grants you a barrier, absorbing up to X amount of damage for 10 seconds. That barrier counts as the barrier that will allow you to freeze enemies, count them as frozen, be able to ricochet. So it's actually more of a damage increase for us rather than a negative. We're going to drop our Ghost Walkers, and the reason is we'll permanently be able to teleport. Our teleport will have less than a 1 second cooldown. When I show you all the numbers, it'll make sense. So we actually run with Exploiters here, which gives you a 50% increased damage to targets that are unstoppable. Now, we still count them as frozen anyway, thanks to our shields. We still count them as chilled. The only difference is we won't automatically launch ice shards at them, we'll have to fire it ourselves, so for the inconvenience, we might as well do it. Additionally, we have a 20% increased crowd control duration, and that'll allow us to have a 3.6 second freeze rather than a 3 second freeze. Now, this here is where things mix up a little bit. We run Stormspell Aspect on a ring, which is a 20% increased vulnerable damage to vulnerable enemies when you have a barrier. Okay, this counts as vulnerable damage. It doesn't say that, but from testing it does. So because of it, it allows us to count as additional vulnerable damage to do enemies. Aspect of Control, a lot of people put in the two-hander for a 40% damage increase to Frozen, but actually it's not amazing at the end game because we're going to have so many multipliers and Frozen is an additive, not a multiplicative. So because of it, you'll probably want to put it onto a ring. And the 2 choices we have here, we have Elementalist and we have Accelerating. Now, there is 2 different ways of playing this build, and I'm going to show you them both. The first one is you can put Elementalist onto your amulet, which will give you a 60% crit chance increase. This will allow you to hit roughly 80% crit chance on all of your core abilities. Now that is nice, but it's not 100%. If you put it onto your weapon, you actually have a 100% chance to crit. Now that sounds great, but because we don't scale too well off crit damage as a sorcerer, we don't have any major forms to be able to get them, such as what a barb has, I actually think it's better to put on critical strikes with core abilities increase your attack speed by 50% for 3 seconds. Because of that, we actually get to hit another breakpoint that we normally would be impossible to hit. And that means we'll have more cooldown management, more lucky hits, and we'll go through that very shortly. So, skills again at the moment we're using Frostbolt, very rarely use it, but it's there as an emergency. Ice Shards, Frost Nova, Icy Blades, Ice Armor, and Teleport. We're utilising the enhancement for Ice Shards and the enhancement for Frost Nova. Emerald in the weapon for 12% crit chance damage to vulnerable enemies, they will always be vulnerable. We are currently using the Ruby and not the Barrier generation. This might sound silly, but the issue is, barriers, we're actually going to permanently be a barrier point. Between the amount of protection points, behind something you're going to see in Paragon, which blows every other barrier away, we are going to have a point where our barriers are permanently going to be at 100%. And because of that, if you decide to then get barrier generation, you're wasting the points. Where if you hit maximum life, not only does your life go up, but how big your barriers can go up will increase. Because say you've got 10,000 health, then your barriers, even if you have more generation, will still be capped at 10,000. Where if you get, say, 5 rubies, you're going to go up to 12,000 health, your barriers are also capped at 12,000. So you're not getting a 5% bonus, you're actually getting an 8% bonus because you're getting life and barrier. Next we run Skull, Jewellery, 250 armour. You'll run one in each, which will be 750 armour. A lot of people keep asking me why, because I've showed it about a few people now, is why we don't use Disobedience. And that is because on tier 4 Torment, armor's almost useless. By the time you hit level 100 in Nightmare Dungeons, armor will be pathetic. It's almost non-existent. It only affects of about 20%. And because of that, it's not as valuable as what it was. You're looking at damage reduction mainly. And as you'll see, that's what we stick to. Damage reduction and barriers. Now, what you can do is, if you find yourself purely mana efficient, never have to press anything, which you should, you want to drop your point out of Glinting Frostbolt, you want to drop your point out of Elemental Attunement, and you wanting to drop a point out of Teleport, 1 point, which will increase its cooldown by half a second, but it'll still be more than manageable. If you don't want to drop a point out of Teleport, which I understand, you can drop a 1 point out of Mana Shield, or 1 point out of Precision Magic. Personally, I'll be going for Teleport. You're then going to put a point in Flame Shield, a point in Enhanced Flame Shield, and a point in Shimmering Flame Shield. This here is to assist you if you run out of potions. It's the only thing that's for. If you actually don't even need it, you could just run with Teleport. Okay? And that there is an option. And what you can do with your skills is you can drop Frostbolt, and I would personally put Ice Blades and Frostbolt in my left click. And then you can swap your Frostbolt over to Flame Shield, which will give you another shield and another survival technique. On hardcore, I honestly can't wait to become mana efficient, and I'll show you the numbers. As soon as you see it, you'll be like, well, yeah, we don't need any additional ways of getting mana, but this will be absolutely insane. Now, I will go through Paragon very shortly. But first things first, I'm actually going to show you some numbers so you can start to see how this build will actually come together. So, the way this build works is by keeping up your Icy Blades. Icy Blades have a 71% lucky hit chance, and they will be proccing lucky hits galore, because Icy Blades scale with attack speed. You summon 2 blades, but their attack speed is individualized for the blades. Meaning, I've got your breakpoints here. As of current, you will have a 6-second duration on your Icy Blades. And I've put down your breakpoints, but honestly I wouldn't even try and hit them. Not until you hit your Paragons, because at this point here, you're going to be hitting ridiculous numbers, and even if you hit 50% attack speed, which will be almost impossible at level 50 as soon as you've dinged, you're still going to have a cooldown on it. It's not great. However, we can actually increase the duration to 7.2 seconds utilizing our Paragon point. Okay, and it'll be using a glyph, which I'll show you. And when you do that, this is when the game totally changes, and I think this is what people could be missing. Okay, this here totally changes your attack speed breakpoints. Why? Because the duration is slightly longer on them as well, meaning you now have a 7.2 second duration. So to hit 20 times for your blades, for them to hit 20 times, 10 times each in 7.2 seconds, you're going to need 38.89% attack speed. Whereas if you want to do that at level, with only a 6-second duration, you would need 66.67% attack speed. It's a big difference. We're going to be hunting for 95% attack speed. And I know you're thinking, Royal Cubs, that's almost impossible. 95% attack speed, really? Yeah. I'll show you, and it's so easy. So, you can choose one of 2 paths here. You can put crit on your weapon and attack speed on your amulet, which at that point you'll get a 100% crit chance, and you will hit this bracket here, which is 81%. You actually hit 82.5%. Alternatively, you can put on the attack speed on your 2-handed weapon and your crit on your amulet, and you will hit 95%, which is almost perfect. It's almost like they set it up like this, because we need to hit 94.44%. The way you would do it is we're going to get 20% guaranteed from Paragon points, 20% attack speed. We're then going to get 50% attack speed off our weapon and having accelerated aspect on it. Yes, we have to max roll it. At the end of the day, I'm not expecting everybody to be able to do this on day 1. Give it a couple of days, farm those aspects. then we can get 2 pieces of equipment. Your rings can have up to 10% attack speed, and your gloves can have up to 15% attack speed. 1 ring 10%, 1 glove 15%, and you've hit your cap. For whatever, you've hit your 95%. As far as people saying, well, if you don't hit your cap, you can obviously get an extra 10% on your other ring. Yes, you can. And to start with, that's exactly what I would recommend to do. Grab yourself 2 rings with attack speed on. Push yourself to that 95%, utilising that extra 10% you can get off a ring will help you for not perfect rolls and also for if your aspect's a bit weak. But if you say only getting the 10% on your second ring and everything's perfectly rolled, you can still only hit 92.5% with an extra 10% on there, so you still wouldn't be able to hit the attack speed bracket, and that is why I'm saying they're the 2 different brackets. So, what we're going to do is we're working out on 95%, because 95% is where I want to go. I'm doing 80% crit, 95% attack speed. That's where I think we should be. With no gear, at 95% attack speed, taking away your effective reduced, you will have a 5.4 second cooldown on teleport with no gear on, a 6.2 second effective cooldown on ice armor, taking away the 8 seconds it will save you thanks to the ice blades because of the cooldown reduction you get from when they hit vulnerable targets. And it will be an 8 second cooldown on Frost Nova, which will be reduced even further than that because every time they hit enemies, they will proc Frost Novas, which we're about to discuss very shortly. And from that point there, that will then reduce the cooldown further. Now we want 5 points of teleport on our feet. We want Harley Quinn's helm, and we want +3 to all defenses on amulet. That there is plus 12, because I can't do math today, is plus 12 teleport points. And what that means is your effective cooldown between blades and having those gear on, teleport cooldown will be 1.3 seconds, not counting for the 1.5 second cooldown reduction when you hit enemies when you teleport. Infinite teleports. That's right. You can just boom, boom, boom. 30% damage reduction, 30% damage reduction. More importantly, that there will allow you to stack up your protection shape barrier of 30% constantly. 30%, 60%, 90%, boom, 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 go, go, go. You'll never have to stop. Now, when you put these points in, we haven't put any points into Frost Nova itself, but you're still going to get +4 to all skills from your head, and you're going to get +3, so you're going to get 7 from your amulets. You're going to get 7 in total. That means even if you don't proc any other Frost Nova, which is impossible, and you'll see why, you have an effective cooldown of 3.4 seconds without putting a single point into it. Now, I've gone through cooldown reduction, and I'll be honest, that's not why this build is good. This here is nothing more than a benefit. What makes us truly work is our lucky hits. Now, there's a lot of information here, and I don't expect you to read it all. I wrote this when I was very tired. So, pretty much, the way lucky hit works is every ability you cast has a chance of, so say you use your ice blades. Ice blades have a 71% chance per swing from each blade to allow you to roll the dice. Okay? Now, when you roll the dice, you then have a chance for that lucky hit to affect. So say you've got your ice blades and it goes bang and it hits and it procs. You then grab all of your lucky dice and you throw them and you check each different one because all of your lucky procs can proc at the same time. They're not individual, they're not combined, they can proc at the same time. So you have 71%, great, and then we go to your Frost Nova enchantment. That has a 30% chance. You do the math, it means every time your icy blades hit, you have a 21.3% chance to proc Frost Nova. They hit twice a second, so that means you have 41% chance. 42.6% chance. But you don't, because we are going to be running with a Paragon point, which I will show you, and also 15% in Precision Magic. So you're going to have a 27.69% chance per blade. We are running with 95% attack speed. 95, we put in directly the break point for what it is, and means we will be hitting roughly 3.89 times a second because we have 2 blades. meaning our proc chance is over 1 per second. So every second your blades are hitting, you'll be going Frost Nova, Frost Nova, Frost Nova, Frost Nova. When you see something called EM, which is called Enchantment Mastery, which we'll discuss shortly, you actually have a 1.29% chance. And there is a 20% aspect which you can choose to take if you want to, which I don't recommend, which would chuck you up to proccing it every 0.66 seconds. It's absurd. It's almost like machine guns, like Frost Nova, Frost Nova, Frost Nova. Everything's permanently frozen, and you gotta think that's how fast it goes off against bosses as well. So that means the bar, stagger bar, is just going up, 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 up. Now, as I've said, we're now going to go through the lucky chance. If you remember, we have two different major lucky abilities. We have our mana regeneration, and we have our free cast 40% additional damage in Avalanche and Frigid Breeze. Avalanche technically can have a 10% chance to proc, but because our targets are permanently vulnerable, this here should never ever happen. Ever. It shouldn't. But I did do the math there in case anybody wanted to see the numbers. I'm going to bypass them though. This is the ones we care about. We're not running the aspect, but again, I did the math in case anybody wants it. As I said, the 20% aspect is a significant increase and may be useful in the early game, but won't be needed in the late game. And the lucky 20% chance is how much we have for both Avalanche and Frigid Breeze. Now I've done a load of math here for you to look at. You can sit there and look or ignore it. It's your choice. What I'm going to say is, you have a combined proc per second of 120% for both of them, meaning you will proc about 1.2 of those casts every second, both on Avalanche and a Frosty Breeze, against single target bosses. Now we do have a 95% attack speed, meaning we're going to be using 2 icy shards every second, so we do still need the aspect of Frozen Memories that makes our Avalanche count for 2 spells rather than 1. Now, our proc chance for 4 targets is 460%, so we will be proccing 4.5 Avalanches and Frigid Breezes every single second. So on single target, our mana per second is 18.48, but we should never spend any thanks to Avalanche. That there is nothing more than an emergency in case Avalanche screws up and misses off a little bit, so that there will top us back up within about 2 seconds to get our 9% damage back, and also to get the additional crit chance from the aspect, which only happens if you're over 100 mana. And if we're in AoE, we'll be getting 69 mana per second back. Nice. Due to the target's always been vulnerable, you should always be mana neutral. And as I've said, we take Frigid as an emergency if we're unlucky. Now, I will make this available inside of the comments for everybody to see. It actually might be in the description. Well, I'll put it somewhere. The old attack speed one I will remove. And I've also wrote down all the best in slot aspects and where you get them. Okay. As you can see for pants, I did put Ice Heart Braids down. They are another unique. Okay. Let's have a look. Now, they give you intelligence, damage to frozen enemies, damage to injured enemies, which means any enemy under 35%, which I thought would be nice as execute for bosses, and freeze duration, which stacks multiplicatively with our exploiters aspect. Okay, now the reason I am keeping both of these, the reason I haven't put it on 100% is because I don't know the chances we're going to get it. Okay, yes, it also means when your Frost Novas explode, that you kill a target with Frost Nova active, they explode and cause Frost Novas, but that, we don't need it. So if you get them and you need more damage, it's worth a look. Another option you can do is you can move Ever Living down to either Exploiters or Aspect of the Protector. I would personally swap out Aspect of the Protector for them, and you can still run what Max will recommend, which is Raiment of the Infinite. You get 2 ranks of Glass Cannon, means you take 6% more damage, but you do 12% more damage. You do 37% to stunned enemies, you do 37% to close enemies, and you get intelligence. I think this is a perfect item for softcore. I think Raiment of the Infinite is in fact one of the best softcore items you can get for a sorcerer. Not so much for hardcore, because if you teleport in and are unstoppable, you're going to get absolutely spanked. Yeah, they're just going to bend you over. you're going to be the new kid in prison. But we'll see. So for now, personally, I wouldn't run with it. When you get all of your defensives up and you can start to use your flame shield and you get used to it, maybe it's worth running. I'll test it. Let's face it, you'll probably get a death video at some point. Now, the final bit we have to go through with this build is Paragon. I have fully mapped out, in my opinion, the perfect Paragon run. We're not going to bore you with every single node. You can see them on the screen. I'm going to show you the yellows we take, the legendaries we take, and the glyphs. Now, with every single glyph, just so you know, we have met the requirement. So you don't have to think, oh, well, have they got both the bonus and the additional bonus? The answer is yes. Okay? If you want to pause and check, of course you can. Now, we start off, we jump straight through, grab our intelligence and non-physical damage bonuses, and we get control. Control, when upgraded, is our single biggest increase from glyphs. It will give us roughly 200% increase to crowd control damage and 200% increase to frozen targets. It'll be a 400% damage multiplier. It's massive, and when you hit 95% attack speed, you will be able to drop some points out of this node around here and max out all of the dexterity nodes here. So you've got one there, you've got one there. I think there was only two if I'm right. Yeah, two more. So you've got those two that you can take, which again will max out your damage. I will be doing extra and further videos on this build as I make it more thorough. Now we're going to work our way up and we put into the next room our exploit glyph. Actually, I should probably tell you what zone we're in. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? We're into the Icefall zone. Icefall means killing a frozen enemy grants you 15% of your maximum life as a barrier for 5 seconds. Now, if we kill 5 enemies, this stacks. There's a 75% barrier. That barrier counts as a barrier, which counts as a frozen target, which counts as a ricochet. You see the point. It's a great choice, and it also gives you some cold percent damages, an extra 25% cold damage up there. We get some damage reduction from chilled enemies, which I believe is quite significant, 3, 6, 9, 15% damage reduction. We get damage to chilled enemies as well, which is quite a significant amount. We get more damage to chilled enemies. We get more damage reduction from chilled enemies, which is another 15%. So there's another, so we're 30% damage reduction from chilled enemies there. And we put in the exploit. The way damage buckets works, to get people to run down, you start at the top with all damage, you then move over to your intellect damage, you then move over to attack speed, you then move over to crit, then you move to everything else, and then you move to vulnerable damage. Vulnerable is the single biggest percentage you can multiply by. The reason I'm saying this, that's why we take exploit, because dealing damage to an enemy gives you 1% damage up to 10 stacks, which is thinking actually that will go up to 100% vulnerable damage, and the additional bonus is vulnerable damage as well. So in total, you will be doing 165% additional vulnerable damage when you get exploit up. This here is your second biggest multiplier, hence the reason you want it. Now, when you're first playing the game, you will now have a choice. I would start up, I would move up, I would grab exploit, I would go all the way around and I would grab Icefall. You now can either move up, right, or left. I'm going to put it on the screen as well in case people are blind don't know left and right. I have seen some people play. I would move up my way up, I would grab exploit, I would then go left and run round and get Icefall. And then personally, I would actually run down here to the left and grab your attack speed bonuses. Okay? The reason I'm grabbing the attack speed bonuses now is because this will increase your damage quite rapidly. Okay? For both your hitting additional breakpoints with Icy Blades, for hitting additional points with your ice shards, being able to attack faster, and being able to proc more lucky skills quite quickly. You're then going to grab Elemental Summoner. This here causes your conjuration skills to have a 5% cooldown. It honestly is not actually that good. We take it because we need the attack speed, and it helps at the lower levels 60 to 70. When we hit 90 to 100, we'll be dropping this like hotcakes, it'll be gone. At that point there, you're going to come back to your exploit glyph and you're going to go right. We're going to go all the way along in a very straight line and dash up a little bit, grabbing the willpowers to be able to take Frostbite. Frostbite increases damage to chilled enemies, but more importantly, the reason we want it is enemies deal reduced damage to us for 5 seconds when they're no longer frozen. We like to take that mitigation. I'll be honest, it's just a really nice buff. We're going to fly straight right and go down and grab Frigid Fate. Frigid Fate is something you heard about a little bit earlier inside of our lucky hit tree, which is dealing cold damage to vulnerable enemies, increases your lucky hit chance by 1% for 5 seconds up to 15%, meaning as long as we're hitting targets, we have a permanent 15% lucky hit chance increase, which will then in turn proc our lucky hits more often. You continue north and you grab all of the vulnerable damage. This here is your single biggest area of damage increase because you grab 20% vulnerable, 25% vulnerable damage in the space of 5 nodes. Now, at that point there, we're going to head north. You would grab your cold damage and you keep on moving forward. And you're going to grab Enhancement Master. This is your last legendary node you'll be grabbing. And what it does is your enhancements are 20% stronger. Well, what does that mean? Trust me, this took me a lot of testing. It's ridiculous. Ice Shards. Ice Shards that conjure and fly towards frozen enemies. Instead of firing 5 Ice Shards a second, it now fires 6. It's just a 20% damage increase. Not complaining of that. Also more ricochets. Works for me. Frost Nova. It means it has a 36% chance to proc instead of a 30% chance. I'll be honest, neither of them are absolutely phenomenal. The 20% damage increase off Ice Shards is nice. I imagine it's going to get nerfed. And we'll see how it goes. Realistically though, it's worth it. Because the extra 6%, the extra 20% chance to proc Frost Novas just means you will be spending less time getting hit. Now, at that point, we are at the most important node, and unfortunately we have to take it last. You move your way up, yeah, you grab your non-physical damages, woohoo, and you get to this point here where we can get 40 intelligence in one small area. And we put on Conjurer. Yes, we have 40 intelligence, meaning we have an 80% damage to conjuration skills. Shit, don't worry about it. Additional bonus is conjuration skills have a 20% increased duration. What that does is makes our breakpoints go from a 6-second duration to a 7.2 second duration. And that is how we managed to hit the 95% attack speed breakpoints. This has been a lot of information and I know it has, but I hope it makes sense, at least to a couple of you. The damage of this is insane. I did have the damage quite well broke down into stats, but they've just re-released the buckets. It was releasing 330,000 damage a second. That was the number I was going to advertise to you all. However, with the buckets changing, it's actually gone up, but there's too many variables for me to be happy with giving you a factual answer right now. I'll be honest. I'll play, I'll get some more evidence, I'll prove it, but right now I'm expecting to maintain around the 330% damage. I know people are going to be immediately, well, you're not playing Pierce. And that's the final thing I want to discuss. You now have a major choice. With this build, we have a bit of an issue. The single best aspect we can get is aspect of the Piercing Cold. Ice Shards pierce 3 to 4 times, dealing 25 to 20% less damage. The problem is, this ability is why people think Ice Shards is dead. Because if Ice Shards doesn't hit 3 targets with Pierce, it doesn't ricochet. Now people are putting things like Ice Shards on their two-handed weapon. It means it's going to ricochet it's going to hit Pierce 7 times before it ricochets. Doesn't work. Your higher chance is just ricochet a second time. So, what you need to do is test this in game. I'll of course be doing videos for you, and of course I'll give you all the tests, and you'll be able to watch me live, you'll see me testing it, and probably getting very frustrated at myself. I honestly can't give you an answer if this is going to be a negative or a positive. I think it's a negative. But it might not be. We'll test it, we'll see how it goes. If it does positively proc, then you can expect whilst naked to be able to do about 39 million damage a second. While naked. If not, you're going to be doing about 22 million damage a second while naked. That's still before you've got all of the crit damage aspects, before your glyphs are leveled up to level 20. It's going to be insane. This build will get you to exactly where you need to be. Anyway, I hope you like what you see. If you do, don't hesitate to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. It's now 7 AM. The release is in 17 hours. So I'm going to go to bed. And I will see you all in the stream for a chance of winning those Ultimate Editions. But until next time, Curbs, you know it. Peace.